Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Unscripted Liberation Codes. My name is Mara Miharis. I am an intuitive astrologer and hypnotherapist, and this is my podcast channel that I co-host with Alex Liberato, who won't be joining us today. Today, we are going to be continuing a conversation that started a few months ago. You may have remembered the time where we brought on the guest Nathan Ciszek, where we talked about our we talked about our history involvement with an online satanic cult group called the Joy of Satan Ministries. Um, those of you who have known me for a long time, those of you who have been friends of mine since high school, know that I was once an active member in this group called the Joy of Satan Ministry. And we're going to talk about this group. And one of the reasons why I really appreciate having Nathan joining us today to talk about this online organization is because Nathan has done a lot of work to dig deeper into the organizers and the handlers of what's going on, and has been able to connect the Joy of Satan Ministries to military abductions, also known as MILABS, has been able to connect it to Project IBIS, the secret space program, and so much more. And he's the only person that I've heard in the last, how long has it been for me? 18, 19 years. He's the only person that I've ever heard speak about the Joy of Satan ministry in this way, and has also been a member of the organization, such as I was. Now, Nathan is a little bit older than I am. He does have some years on me. So when he was in part of the organization, I was still very young. When I joined the organization, I was only 17 years old, and I was an active member for about 5 years or so. And so we're going to be talking about these things. And another thing I just want to just put out there as we begin to discuss this topic is a lot of people within the spiritual communities, within the love light communities, which I'm a part of. I'm spiritual. I'm love and light. I'm also death and darkness. I'm full spectrum. But a lot of things that I see happen is we become so uh, polarized in trying to embody and be one part of the spectrum so much that we then fear anything that's on the other side. So what am I trying to say? What I mean is sometimes some folks are afraid or hesitate to talk about Satanism or or certain things because they're afraid of the energy. They're afraid that demons are going to come out and all that stuff. And I think that that is a very weak way to live when it comes to being aware of what else is there. You know, it's like we can't be afraid of our shadow. We can't be afraid of what exists. And if we are going to really embody a level of faith and belief in our practice, then we have to be able to look at the eyes of the devil and not be afraid of it, not ignore it and try to pretend it's a frequency or something that doesn't exist. Um, and so please do not get all weird in your own mind and creeped out thinking that negative energy is going to come through the computer screen and haunt you because we're talking about these topics. If you do experience such things, I'd like to challenge you to ponder, is really negative energy coming through this topic, or is it an aspect of my mind and my subconscious mind that's generating this spooky experience for me because it's a shadow realm that is scary, and I'm love and light, and that's opposite of love and light, so therefore I am afraid of it. you know? And it goes the other way. If you're too far off in the dark end, then when you look at an angel, then you don't know how to really understand that angel. So, you know, let's try to come to a place of a center point of neutrality and true wisdom and mastery of ourselves together here. Going a little bit on a rant here, but I'm going to bring on our guest here soon. Just another thing I wanted to share about the Joy of Satan ministry thing. You know, when I found this organization, I was only 17 years old. Okay, I was 17 years old. I had just moved from Los Angeles to Oregon, about 12 miles south of Portland, and I was processing a lot of trauma. Um, I was 17 years old. I was overcoming a meth addiction that started when I was about 14 years old. Um, I was leaving an environment that was very toxic, full of violence, full of drugs and gangs, and I was deeply traumatized and deeply wounded. And I was seeking something. I had this just this black hole in my heart, and I was seeking something that was going to help me piece things together, that was going to help me make sense of the fucked up reality that was my life back in Los Angeles and empower me in some way. And at that time, my biggest influence was black metal music, which was very satanic. So I began researching on the internet. And this was also the first time where I was really able to roam free on the internet. And I spent hours going through different forums and websites online about Satanism and paganism, and I was really following like a yes or no indication of my like intuition. Like, is this what I'm looking for? No. Is this what I'm looking for? No. Is this what I'm looking for? No. Because one of the first things that I came across of was the Church of Satan, which is what most people know about when they think about Satanism, satanic practices, the Church of Satan, the Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey. These are the main things. And I got to tell you, me as a 17-year-old child online trying to seek for something, when I first went on that website and started reading and looking at the pictures and getting the energy, even then at that moment, something within me was like, oh no, this is bullshit. This isn't the realness. I'm not, I need to keep searching. This is not what I'm looking for. And I kept looking. And when I came across the Joy of Satan Ministries and read their whole statement on their line, and I dug deep into so many links and blog posts of their website, and finally it was like, this is it. This is the truth that I'm looking for, you know, because it was so perfectly done, and so that's how I got into it. And I I was pretty I dove into it head first, not really understanding what I was doing at that time. And you know, everything happens for a reason, and I'm not afraid to look back at that and to talk about that and to acknowledge the journey that I have been through to awaken and become the person that I am today. Because whether I want to hide it or not, it was through that organization, it was through that vibration of Satanism that opened me spiritually and allowed me to consciously walk a seeking path to expand my knowledge, my wisdom, my consciousness, and my spirit body. And you know, the truth will always prevail. And my intention was to seek the truth, my truth. And so even though at first I was misguided and confused and deeply traumatized, eventually through my journey in studying and research and being a diligent practitioner in what I was believing in, the truth prevailed, and I got to understand in my own way what I was really doing. And I had a moment at age 23. So from 17 to 23 years old, I had a moment at age 23 where I realized, oh my God, this whole satanic identity that I have, this whole hatred towards mankind that I have, it's all based off of fear and trauma. I'm a deeply wounded person, and I'm afraid of the world because of all of the things that I endured and I experienced. And this empowered me in some way. This made me feel like I had an edge over the common person, over the common man, and it empowered me. And I created an ego and a facade out of fear. And I had a moment where I was able to realize that and get into my heart center and no longer in this traumatized, reptilian mindset, and have a real spiritual awakening. And shortly after that, a lot of other things occurred into my life. But this is a journey of discovery, a journey of truth. Shout out to Journey of Truth podcast. Love you guys. It's funny, like that's such a perfect title because I say that all the time and just talking, we're on a journey to truth. So great title there. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest, Nathan, and I will allow him to introduce himself, and we're going to go back and forth. We got some videos we're going to show you. So hang tight, everybody. Hey, Nathan.
Hey, Mario. I hope everybody's doing well out there. My name's Nathan Ciszek. I'm a U.S. military MILAB victim, survivor, and activist. I'm a disclosure activist. And I've been involved in some interesting things, and this happens to be one of them. And Mario, you did an excellent job of just explaining how you got into this and how it made you feel. And because what you described was indicative of just about everybody's story that I listened to when I was in that cult, because we all came from a troubled place. We all had problems, trauma in our lives. And just like with you, I was online for many, many years looking for answers. I kept having paranormal experiences and I wanted to know why they were happening. And I would reach out to researchers and people I saw that were on shows and so forth. And I never got an answer. And then eventually, in 2003, I had this really intense psychic experience after kind of a near-death experience. I didn't completely die, but I had a very horrible reaction to Singulair, which is an allergy drug, and I was hospitalized off and on for about a week. At which point I got out. And while I was in there, my last day, I started having empathic, and I had a telepathic experience with a man who was laying in a hospital room. He was elderly, he had lesions on him, and he said, "Help me." And I felt his pain, and I felt his energy. It was the first time that I really connected with anybody like that. So I got really emotional, and that set off a chain reaction of events for the following 3 weeks, where I was having these experiences like that over and over again. And it was like there was a lady in the UPS store who came in, and I was there waiting in line. There was a couple of guys ahead of me, and she wouldn't stand near us, and I knew that she had been raped, and she didn't feel safe being around men, especially 3 or 4 in a line in that room. And I had just one experience like that after another, and then it all abruptly ended, and it stopped. And when it did, it was like turned off like a switch, and I had this communication. It was a verbal communication, but it was like a concept too. So, and it told me there was people like myself, and I had to find them, and they're on the internet. And that's what I got. And then for the next 2 years, just like you were doing, I was searching for answers. I was searching for these people. I went to different groups, and I tried everything. First, it was the New Age, and I looked all around. I didn't get any answers. Nobody would really, and the funny thing was, nobody would really even interact with me. I would go into groups and post something that I thought people would really get people's attention, like the soul transference memory, and it would go flat. And I was just looking for answers. And it wasn't until I found that website, I was just searching one night, and I kept coming across it because I covered everything, and I didn't look at the occult. And finally it was like, okay, let's search the world of the occult. So I'll start with Satanism. And then I found the website. I started reading it. It was like a magnetic attraction. I felt that I was, I felt that this was it. And I kept questioning that the whole time I was reading it. But the website, as you said, was so well put together with its propaganda that it literally sucked you in. So one of the things that you may have been going through, like I was, and for a long time, is I was studying astrotheology and learning how the religions were all kind of piggybacking each other. So the theology was just a repeat. and there was 17 or 18 or 16, whatever messiahs like Jesus with a similar story. I read that. I did all of this. So by the time I got to the Joy of Satan, I was done with mainstream religion because I'd been through all of this, like just looking at alternatives and just looking to
Right.
check it out and see if there was any validity to it. And of course, I went into the atheist community. I had a stage where I went with that. And what I found is a lot of the other people did too. It was like we were following a predetermined program. And I could tell that all of us, the people that really gravitated towards me, because immediately as soon as I got in there and I posted that story of the soul transference, it was like, people were paying attention for once. And I reached out. And the interesting thing is that the person who recruited me was the creator of the group.
Wow.
And I could never get anybody to respond to me. And I sent her an email. I got a response back the next day, and she had answers. So this was like, and it was there. And I felt the pull. I felt the tug. They were literally pulling me in. And what I felt is that I was at home. I reached home, and unfortunately that wasn't home for me, but that's what it felt like. I felt complete. I felt like a mission accomplished. So I had no problem doing, that the ritual where you sign your name, to Satan
Yeah.
in blood, the whole oath
Yeah.
thing. I mean, that was like a big rush. I played
Mhm.
Merciful Fate. It was in my shed when I did it. I played Merciful Fate and the oath and all that. And I sat around for a little bit. I'm like, oh, here it goes. And it was just like a drop. And I signed my name, but I didn't write it in blood. It was just an ink pen. And I was like, and everything was supposed to get better.
Mhm.
And it felt good for a while. And then I started to get this contact. This contact kind of for me really started right away. It started on the day, it was like about a week or two after I contacted High Priestess Maxine. And I had an experience. And so it was the last email that I sent to her. I've told the story before. I had an entity come in the room and affect my physiology and charged me up with energy. And I had a high for 5 days, the same kind of high that I remember being in front of the Great Pyramid in a memory flash that I had, and feeling that Orion negative energy that was like almost like reminded me of the Luxor Casino in Las Vegas in a sense because of the air and the ambiance. But it was just like this sense of awe. But it was just this charged up energy, and there's no way to explain it. You'd have to feel it. But at the time, it felt good, and I could connect it to other points in my life where I felt it before because they were involved. And this was the military MILAB programs. This wasn't Satan. This wasn't the Anunnaki that are talked about in that theology. This was literally a military MILAB program masquerading as a satanic cult. And you had a somewhat of a different experience than I did. It was more positive, but still negative in my regard. I mean, after like just a couple of months, things started to go bad. Ultimately, it's why I left the group, because I realized that it was a ruse. But it was still a ruse on me because I realized the theology was BS, but the ETs were real. But I didn't realize they were actually a product of the military industrial complex. And this whole thing, because the premise of the Joy of Satan, when you listen to what Maxine was talking about, was to create a psychic army that would take out the New World Order. And 2012 was supposed to be the big showdown. And it came and it went and nothing happened. And just like any other cult, they just reconfigured a theology. They go on another story. People get replaced and so on. So I want to set the stage for this video that we're going to look at. This was September 26th or 27th of 2019. Over the course of like the spring, summer months, it was actually the spring in April, I got really, really sick. I started having autonomic nervous system failure issues, and they were attacking my vagus nerve, and that's the military MILAB programs were. And so by the time I got to sending this email, now I had already sent Rex a previous email about a year before, never got a response. Keep in mind, at this point, I had a speech impairment that was remote control, so they could control whether or not my speech was fluent. They could make me stutter at certain key moments. So trying to go public like that, very, very difficult. I didn't want to do it. My idea was if I could just get this information out to somebody who would actually do something with it, at least talk about it, then I would have done something, because I felt that I had a responsibility to warn other people. And I thought that Rex Bear of the Leak Project, who had, like, at the time, probably 100,000+ subscribers, was the guy to do it, because I'd watched him for quite a while, especially during the period I was sick. I watched his shows every day, and and I'd been writing stuff under his videos, talking about a consciousness simulation that we're in, and things that I was piecing together. So let's start this video, and we get into it, and it'll just speak for itself, and then we'll stop at certain points and we'll talk about it. So
Yeah.
I guess the way we'll do it is, if I put my hand up like this, or I just say stop, just stop the video, and then we'll start the conversation.
Okay, and this is going to be the short one, right? The one that's like
The short, yeah, the short one. It's email reveal is at the end of the video's name.
Gotcha.
All right, now I just want to say one last thing.
Yep.
I had sent this video the night before that I saw it, so he didn't make the video. I think he made the videos the next morning. Not sure. I'd have to look to where what he's wearing, but he read the email with this first video that we're going to see. Then he went to bed. Now, I don't know if he read it, made the video, or he made a video the next day, because both videos came out about an hour apart. So what happened was that I sent him the email thinking I'd never hear anything. This is just another ill-fated attempt. The very next morning, about 9 o'clock, I got up. By 10, I was going in and checking my computer and my email, and I saw that the video is up, and I saw satanic cult, blah, blah, blah. So, I saw what I needed to know, that this was about me. I instantly, it was like a jolt of anxiety and fear and mixed emotions. And like, oh my God, it's like, what's going on here? It's happening. So I watched the video. I watched a couple minutes. I had to turn it off. I went, got some coffee, thought about it, came back, watched it. By this point, the second video was up, and I'm looking at, and it's talking about a dreamscape that was implanted. So this was shock to me. And just so you know, Rex never got back with me. I thought that, this was the gateway to exposing this. I finally got somebody who has the ability to talk, who has charisma, has a successful podcast, who covers these issues, that this would be the guy who was going to do it. I was deeply disappointed. What I didn't know is that this was an attempt to get me to do something like this, but then to sabotage me so that I would shut up.
Right.
Ultimately, what they did afterward to ensure that was going to happen, instead of Rex and me having a normal correspondence after I sent them the video, they told me to go and write everything about myself, pages after pages after pages of emails. And I sent to him, I covered everything I possibly could up to that point, at the point of my self-awareness of what I was in, and who I was and what I was involved in, which was very limited and very obscured. So it was more from a contactee point of view. I had no idea it was a MILAB, even though you'll hear in this first video that I use MILABS as an example of how this is what my experience is similar to MILABS, which is a telltale sign of the Stockholm syndrome, and how you could be abused sexually, mentally, physically, and made sick, but yet at the same time, you still think the ETs are good. You don't see a connection with anything like a MILAB program, the military. You're totally immersed in a complete illusion. So
Yeah.
let's get started.
Yeah. Okay. And then, audience, please let us know if you're able to hear the audio of the video. The last time I went live and tried to play a video, I was tinkering around for like 12 minutes and I couldn't get sound through. So I'm relying on you in the comments to let me know that you can hear the audio. Okay. All right. So let's start to share the screen. Share window. Share this window. Okay. This is the video. Yeah, I watched it at like 2 times speed.
I'm not hearing a sound.
No sound coming through?
Nope.
What about you, audience? Can you hear anything?
If we're going to have problems, we can do plan B, which is do a cell phone and do it audio. That'll work.
Play through your cell phone?
Yeah, I gotta infiltrate it here in chat, so we gotta get rid of it as soon as I see it.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Let's go ahead and do that, because I don't. Usually, my co-host is the one that knows how to do all the technical stuff. Audio is five. Susan, were you able to hear the video though? You can hear us, but can you hear the video? I'm going to play the video right now. No, it's live. We're live right now. No sound from video. Okay, cool. Then we're not gonna waste any more time. Then we'll just play it. We'll play the audio through the cell phone. Okay, glad you guys can hear us. Thank you for the feedback. Whenever you're ready, Nate.
This is all this good technology that we've developed. It works great when you need it, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Got to go through a commercial first, so let's see.
Okay.
Rumble always has 2 commercials.
Mm.
Okay, here we go. God, I hate having to do it this way because it kind of loses a lot of the feel, because of the video clips actually show facial expressions and other things. We'll just have to.
I'll play the video. I can play the video, and we can see the video.
Yeah, why don't we do that? We'll try to sync it the best we can.
Yeah. So I'm at a minute 12.
All right, why don't you just start it over? I'm at 0, so
Okay.
I'm right past the commercials.
All right, I'll hit play after you do.
Let's just do 1, 2, 3.
Hi, Rex Bear Elite Project. How the heck are you? I'm about to share with you a very disturbing, spooky email that was sent to me. I get over 100 emails a day usually, and I don't have a chance to go through all of them. Oftentimes, I'm sure I miss really good stories, so I'm going to be working harder on going through as many emails as I can. I'm even looking for an assistant to help me with that. But I want to talk to you about this one in particular, because this is connecting in the email, and I can't verify if this is real or not. So let's look at this as hearsay. Let's look at this as a story. However, if it is true, or if even a quarter of it is true, wow, 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 wow. So, ET connections, abductions, soul transference, past life regressions, a satanic cult, social media connected with this cult. Very bizarre and spooky. Now, I'm not going to name this website because I think it would give it more publicity, and I don't know if that's a good thing. I will say, once I read through this, you might have already heard of it. This website, or people from this website, have attempted to troll the channel before by leaving the links, a bunch of different names, and I stopped it because it was to the point of it wasn't just one per video, it was dozens, and it was as if there was a campaign designed specifically. The word Satan is in the website name, though. I will say that. So anyway, I would like to read this to you. Before I do, I want to give my friends over at PatriotSolarBank.com a shout out. Thank you guys for extending the special for Leak Project listeners. So this Patriot Solar Bank right now, if you use the code LeakProject15, you will get a total of 65% off, because it's 50% off with the code LeakProject15. That's an additional 15%, 65% off. PatriotSolarBank.com. That gives you something about the size of a good-sized mobile phone, like a Note 9, about that size, maybe a little bit bigger, and it's got a solar panel on the front of it, so you can just put it on your dash. It picks up solar rays, it charges the battery, and it's got 2 USB ports, so you can plug in your phone. You can plug in 2 phones. You can plug in 2 devices at once. This thing is extremely handy, especially if you're ever in a situation where you need to plug in your phone and you don't have extra juice. This thing just picks up power by the sun. PatriotSolarBank.com, code LeakProject15, PatriotSolarBank.com. Okay, so that as fast as I could. Now, let's get into the spooky stuff here. Now, if you are very sensitive to information that is presented that talks about ETs and satanic cults, etc. Turn this off now, because this is pretty spooky, and I'll keep it mellow. I'm not going to say everything in the email. I do just want to let you know, though, that it is pretty deep. So here we go, and I want to thank the person for sending me this email. Dear Rex, I've been a viewer for a couple of years. I've tried to reach out to you twice in the past. I've been wanting to pass something on to you that you should be interested in. I've had spiritual contact and psychic events since I was a child. In the beginning, I thought that they were angels, but they became human extraterrestrials. And I found myself going through trauma-based soul and personality manipulation procedures carried out by the ETs. Excuse me. This situation involves my grandmother and several people with past life connections to me that are outside of my family. The ETs are dark-skinned, tall Nordics. I have several short past life memories as well as frequent experiences with them. We can put this part of it on ice because I'll be doing some more videos this fall, and don't expect you to waste your time with me. I have something bigger for you to check out. What I want you to take a look at is this. There is an internet-based cult which combines Satanism and a variety of other pagan religions centered around the Enki mythos. Here's the website. Then they give the website name. Once again, I'm not going to tell you that website name. Some of you probably already know. I think I gave enough information out there that if you do the research, you can find it for yourself, or just listen to this and let's look at it as a story. Let's look at it as a story. Let's look at it as a live action role play. Let's look at it as a story. Here, one of the sermons, they leave a link to one of the sermons. Then the email goes on to say, their theology is based on alien contact because several groups of ETs are using this internet cult and their social media groups to recruit targeted people such as myself. Then the email goes on to say, this person goes on to say, I got involved with them back in 2005 and it turned my life upside down. When I arrived, I met others like myself and we began having group experiences. It was everything from astral sex to spiritual warfare. Sometimes we had conflict with other groups involved in angel magic. You had a man on your show several times who claims to have met Enki. Well, Enki is a character being portrayed by multiple ETs, and that man isn't alone. As it turned out for me, the ETs that were interfering with me as a child were the same ones interacting in rituals and other forms of contact with, I'm going to say the name, internet groups. They're running a program where targeted people are subconsciously pushed using thought forms in the groups, like, I'm going to say its name again, and then they weed through the arrivals. The targeted individuals are placed in programs, and the remainder is either run off with a negative spiritual experience or perhaps used later in other programs. These would involve the creation of social implants. In this case, the clergy, and possibly abductions, either in the present life or the next. I think there's a connection between some of the ritual initiates and occult practices and the common story that we hear that abductees actually agreed to their abductions at some point in the past, such as in a past life. And now the aliens are taking them against their will in their current life. That could mean that the pact with the devil has an entirely new meaning. There's also a connection between ETs and occult societies going back to the beginning of the human program on this planet. Only now it involves social media as a means of spreading and organizing. And researchers never think to look in such oddball places. I've been dealing with ET interference for 45 years. I have a past life memory of being in a lab where I was placed into a large machine where I experienced my soul being removed and placed in a human fetus at the end of the first trimester. The memories are edited and their extraterrestrial human faces are covered with black boxes, and often the surrounding are hidden in a white haze. I refer to the lab as a white room memory because of the bright haze. That was the first memory of its kind that I've had since childhood. And that inner knowing that something was different about me was built upon by frequent experiences throughout my life, starting with that memory that served to groom and condition me into finding others like myself, and then finding out later that the entire thing was actually an experimental program that they are running. It's a form of active personality engineering, very similar, in fact, to what you hear with MILABS. The interesting thing is that my ET contact claims to be my sister and my spouse. I've had telepathic contact as well as limited out-of-body contact with her for 13 years. I also had contact with a male prior to her. There are also 2 other ETs that come through which refer to themselves as life engineers. These are the ones who I've been dealing with since I was a child. The spousal contact began in 2006, 1 year after my initiation in the name of the organization again. The experience, while being trauma-based in many aspects, has been therapeutic, which is actually good because if not, it would be an indication that something really bad was happening to me and others. Then it goes on to say the bottom line is that from they have explained and shown to me is that what they are doing is waking me up inside an engineered lifetime, which allows them greater ability to do therapies that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Apparently,
okay, let's stop it there real quick.
Okay.
Now, first off, I mean, let's just put yourself in his position. You're a podcaster. You do paranormal subjects, UFOs, ETs. That's your kind of your primary focus.
What year was this, real quick?
This was September 26th or 27th of 2019.
Okay.
Okay, so if you think about what our knowledge range was back then, we just got done with Project Camelot. Project Avalon was a group. They've been going for a few years. The internet censorship was just beginning. If you noticed, he didn't want to say the word Nazi. He didn't want to say targeted individual. He said targeted people.
Did he not want to say it because of censorship, or did he not want to say it because he thought it was too weird and creepy and might freak out his audience?
No, it was censorship because they were.
It was censorship. Okay.
They were already getting people. When I tried to go public less than a year later, they had me completely shadow banned. So what also people need to know too is that 1 month after I sent this email to him, and he did this video and he did the second one that we're going to watch in a moment, the NSA or some government agency put sound effects on my landline. They started hacking into my computer. Back then, the hard drives they weren't the solid state hard drives now. They're more, the mechanical variety. So they made more noise and it would literally sound like it was eating itself because they were pulling off all this information, directly off the computer. And it would slow down everything. I mean, I was watching a YouTube video and it just suddenly slowed down to a crawl to the entire image started to break up. And I had to unplug the network cable to get it to stop. When I started talking about this to a friend, same thing started happening to his computer. And we started getting mutual sound effects on the phone. It was mostly on my end because they always target the person with the sound effects and then periodically let other people hear it. It's basically harassment because you start to question your own sanity. If somebody else can't hear it and you're hearing evil laughter and screeches and sound and all kinds of other things, the other person's going to start questioning your sanity too, which leads you to question yours. But it was like an instant thing. It was like, boom, all of this stuff started happening. And after I contacted Rex to tell him that I was being watched now by simply emailing him. And I said, they're using your email inbox as an information hub. They're basically phishing. I didn't know that I was in the programs. I also suspect that he is too, because he got into this podcasting thing because of an experience he had when he was a kid. He remembers being in a crib and having non-human entities coming around that look like maybe a gray or an insectoid or a reptoid. So that got him into the podcasting. And but when it came down to actually really getting into something that had some meat on it, he totally bailed out of fear. I mean, this was his moment to actually do something, and who knows where it would have went. Probably been some targeting and shadow banning. But, he would have came out of this probably accomplishing something that he wasn't able to accomplish under any other circumstances before. Because it's like, you've got proof that something happened. So I don't think there's any real need to finish that video. He just kind of rambles on for a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's get to the second one. We'll run a couple minutes into that. We'll get the main idea. Then we'll go to the third video at minute 30. and then we'll just from there just do a free-form discussion.
Okay.
Unless
That second video, do you want me to start it from the beginning, or is there?
Yeah, we'll start it from the beginning, because the first couple of minutes is a tell-all of what happens, and then after that, he just rambles about the possibilities of dream hacking used as a commercial advertising tool and for other purposes. So
yeah, okay, it's a bit of a long video. We're not going to watch the whole thing, are we?
Just a couple minutes, yeah, just the first few minutes. I gotta find it real quick.
Alrighty.
Here it is, right here. So we're gonna go through the commercials again.
Okay.
And then I'll let me know when you're ready, and I'll hit play on this too.
I'm ready.
All right, just give me a second. All right, the count of 1, 2, 3.
Hey everybody, Rex Bear Elite Project. How the heck are you? I wanted to share with you a very spooky, eerie dream that I had last night, actually this morning, because I woke up this morning remembering it. And it was so vivid that I needed to go back in my mind and cross-reference the memories to confirm it was a dream. I mean, it was that real. So what makes it even more spooky and bizarre is I get an email that I read last night talking about somebody that claims to have been not only abducted multiple times by ETs, but also a part of this satanic cult. And this person tells me about remembering their soul being transferred to different bodies, and manipulation via social media of extraterrestrials, remembering these extraterrestrials, but when they have these visions, they remember this white haze, and the ETs having a black box around their heads. This person also explains them as dark-skinned Nordics. Very interesting to say the least, but the connections this person makes to a satanic cult are also quite interesting. And then in the dream, let me share this dream with you now real quick. This is where it gets just very bizarre. I mean, I had to put on my tinfoil cap for this one. As you can see, I've got it on right now. This is the McFly edition. These caps come with liners. These are EMF blocking liners that will actually block, they'll shield electromagnetic frequencies. The lower frequencies all the way up to 30 gigahertz, which is in the new 5G range.
All right, do you want to stop that and try to skip past this commercial I'm doing? Let me see where I can, let me see if I can find
if
this
got
spot.
a wrap.
I don't want to waste time with something that's probably not even available anymore.
But I start thinking to myself, this dream
All right,
must have been.
Mario, go to minute 5 or minute 4:56. If you're able to get close to 5-minute mark, we'll start there. It'll just look like a kung fu movie where he talks and the voices.
Okay, ready.
Okay, let's go.
Triggered by that email that I read last night. Now go back and watch the last podcast that I just did, where I was talking about this email, and this person sends me their personal experiences and the story they talk about being connected to this cult of this satanic cult and ET manipulation. And then, as I talked to you before, about what they remember about these ETs. And then I got this dream. So it made me think about a couple years ago when this was during the elections, and I had this dream about Hillary Clinton.
All right, let's move ahead a little bit. Let's see. I should have just spent the time and edited this
podcast. And so we go in this car, and she's talking to me.
Let me see here.
Dream.
He likes to fight me.
Podcast. Listen to it if you haven't already. It'll really bring these together. And the dream that I had. In the dream, it's talking about how these people would go out and do astral ceremonies and stuff like that. And so it's another thing. How many people can tap into others' minds, can tap into others' dreams and influence them? If you can influence somebody in their dreams, if you can tap drop little seed.
You know what? It would be better to go to the Elizabeth April one, because he tells a better story here. And I apologize to the viewers and to you for not having this completely ready. It was rushed.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Real quick, I just want to respond to a few of the things.
Sure.
And uh, so you, it's weird because this, I don't understand like what's going on with this guy. I've never really heard of him before,
Okay.
but it seems like he made the video where he read your email and then stopped it and then immediately changed hats and started to make another video saying he just had a dream. Um, and I in that is he, where does he eventually lead to in that dream? Is he saying that you and the emails and that information triggered for him to have that dream, or was that dream something he had prior and then suddenly remembered it? Because from watching that first video about where he's reading the email, and then the next video where he's talking about the dream, he's wearing the same T-shirt. He looks
Right.
exactly the same. All he
But he
did was
has
change the
different.
hat.
Okay,
So
well, that answers my question because I forgot what he was wearing the first time. He made both of these that morning that I woke up, and an hour or two later, I saw it, right? So he made those back to back. He made his living at the time by selling products, his own products, and as well as other people's products. So he's constantly doing product plugs because the ad revenue isn't that great on YouTube. So he does that with all of his videos. So he did those at the same time, obviously, but he didn't believe it. I mean, he thought that this was an overactive imagination, but he thought it was something worthwhile bringing up to Elizabeth April because of the intensity of it and how lucid it was and how real it felt.
the dream.
Yes, right. And so she's the one that validates it. The backstory to this was what we talked about off camera, is that after she does the podcast with him, we'll see the little short segment of that in a moment. A couple of weeks later, on October 13th of 2019, I was told by the supposed ETs to reach out to Elizabeth April and connect with her. And when I went to her website, at the time, she was doing psychic group chats where you paid $75 and you got to ask her 2 questions about yourself or something. At which point I set that up, and that was October 13th. And then what the ETs attempted to do is they were just trying to mess with me. They told me that she was going to be working with me to build a community, a community like a Starseed support group and so forth. And it was going to be kind of like another Joy of Satan virtual temple complex where the extraterrestrials would commune with the contactees and then essentially use them as social engineering implants for, disclosure. So this was like, really what this was is that this is something that they saw me working towards in the future as an activist. And what they wanted to do was to create a scenario where I did it and failed and they screwed it up for me. So it was a way of shutting me down, just like they put you in these cults, for example. And the purpose of this cult is to get people let me go back and say this. I'm sure you may have heard what a sleeper is in the MILAB community. If they kill you
Yeah,
before 30,
yeah.
you don't necessarily start waking up. There's some exceptions to that. I would be one of the ones. And so they knew that I was going to wake up early, perhaps before 30. So what they did is they engineered an experience for me of paranormal events. It took me away from what I thought was extraterrestrial. It became more of a spiritual type of thing. I was going through psychic events. I thought it was angels, maybe.
Was the experience the autoimmune disease and the allergic reaction to the medication you were on? Is that the experience?
No, I had them all of my life. What they did
Okay.
is they'll often piggyback. Well, they'll take a pre-existing event. There's something that's going to happen, and they'll see it in the future coming up. So they figure, okay, he's going to have this reaction singular. So let's turn this into an event where he actually has some psychic events as well. So we're going to show ourselves to him a bit. The purpose of that is, of course, first thing I thought is I had such a high fever. I've done something to my brain at 105 degrees Fahrenheit that caused me to have some sort of psychic abilities because, people speculate that applied, trauma, whether it be shell shock or post-traumatic stress disorder, military triggers psychic abilities. It's just kind of something that people see, you hear it on, TV shows and stuff. So, I thought it was something like that or something physiological, but they
Oh,
just took that and used that as a way to kind of stage an event. So that sort of set me in that direction. It could have been anything else. They could have done it with anything. They
okay.
just used that.
So that's really interesting because what you're saying is um I went through things very similar to that, where, and that's kind of how I pieced it together too, was like, okay, something in some other way, uh somebody or something was able to see that there was this sort of, I don't know, predestined or fated event of me coming into a greater sense of awakening and activation. And so because that event was going to happen in my timeline that was going to activate me and empower me, then they tried to uh sort of, in a way, plug into that. And I don't want to say hijack it, because it's an attempt to hijack, but
Right.
the source and the divine, there's no fucking hijacking that. There's only attempts to hijack it and maybe distort it for a while until you figure your shit out. But I had a moment where uh oh my gosh, and as I start to think about it, it blows my mind, the level of different things that were proactive in that brought me to this situation. I was living on a pot farm in Oregon, in Southern Oregon, and it was like the year after marijuana became legalized in that state. So money was coming from all over the world, all over the country, to invest in land, develop, and invest in farmers, and create grow ops and make tons of fucking money. And I got in a situation where a man hired me and the girl that I was with at that time, and he invited us to go live on the pot farm, learn everything about growing, and make a lot of money trimming weed and having free rent out there. And I was like, that sounds fucking great. And so we live in this house, and shortly after arriving, one of his investors from Boston comes in, which he actually became a good friend of mine. We still talk today. This was years ago. This was back in 2016. He shows up and he's like, "I'm here because products should be out in the market. The marijuana should be moved. I invested way too much fucking money. What's going on?" And that's when I realized, like, oh my God, this is like a sinking ship going on. And tens of thousands of dollars was invested into this man to grow marijuana, because he's a phenomenal grower. The dude is a fucking genius, but he is of the dark. Like, he was one of the most smartest guys I've ever encountered, but he was totally narcissistic, dark guy. And his wife had left him, took all the kids. He was relapsing on meth and other drugs. And I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. Meanwhile, the girl I was dating started to become possessed by like real dark energies. Her and we were going through some weird shit. The girl I was dating was ex-military. She was in the Air Force, from the Midwest, okay? And we had met in Portland, okay? And we had met at like a spiritual psychic meetup at someone's house months prior. And I'm a little bit in a story mode, so I'm sorry, but I'll try to wrap it up quick. But I just like I'm just kind of piecing it together with the things you're sharing me, and I'm like, this is like some high level fucking orchestration here. Um, I meet this girl, right? And I'm like 25, 26 years old. And there was a time where I was like, wow, okay, she's hot. I want to date her maybe. So I was gonna ask her for her number, but then like my higher self was like, no, 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 do not engage, leave now. So I was like, damn, okay, I'll leave now. So I left and just hung out outside while my friends were still in there doing the thing, and I just like made a phone call and was just on the phone for like an hour or two until my friends were ready to leave. Well, I had written my name on the entry form, my name and my email. About a week or so later, that woman reaches out to me via email saying, "Hey, I thought we had a connection. I didn't get your number. You left, but I saw on the form you left your email, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, oh, dang. All right, maybe this is supposed to happen, you know, her and I. Okay. So, you know, we start dating and it gets really intense. Cutting that short, like she had just got discharged from the military due to like a mental breakdown, which I first she told me it was because she failed the drug test, but I found out it was actually because she had a psychotic break. And I was like, "What brought you to out here to Oregon from the Midwest?" And she said she was just like meditating one day, and literally like something just told her Portland, Oregon. You know, well, what I'm trying to explain is that this woman was an MK Ultra military programmed sex kitten that was, you know, assigned to hook up with me, and I got the alien love bite to fucking fall in love with her,
Right.
and she dragged me through this intense fucking, you know, relationship that lasted 9 months that eventually led us to living into this house where we're growing marijuana. And in that house situation, it was very chaotic. Everyone was fighting. The girl I was dating, her name was China. She was fucking going like there was a period where we're all trimming weed. Even one of the investors, one of the top dollar investors, he's trimming weed because he's trying to get his product out in the market and make his return. This dude's a businessman. And he's sitting right here, and my ex is standing right behind me, and she's standing right behind me, looking at me like this, with a fucking big ass kitchen knife in her hand. And my buddy, he's trimming, and he's like, China, you got a crazy look in your eyes, staring at Mario with that knife in your hand. Are you okay? And I turn around, and I'm like, what the fuck? And she like fucking just gone. You know, she stopped eating for days. She locked herself in a room. It was bizarre. And everyone in the house is kind of losing their shit. We were right in between eclipses too. We just had a lunar eclipse. We're about to have a new moon Pisces eclipse. And so I am completely stressed out, right? I'm like, whoa, I'm way stressed out. I don't know what's going on. So I decided to get up. It was like 5 a.m, and I walk way out in the end of the property and started praying. I started praying and chanting. And at that time, I was really deep into my practice with Kabbalah. So I was chanting Yod, Hey, Vav, Hey, like over and over and over and over. And then I was even singing a Kabbalistic prayer, the Ana Bechoa, which I was singing the Ana Bechoa like over and over and over. And just like putting my intentions like, please help me understand the situation. Please give me guidance and clarity. I'm trying to remove my ego. I just want to understand what's going on because I'm fucking way lost and confused and far away from home. And I had this like moment where I'm wandering and I'm praying, and I get to this part of the river where the river kind of splits, and I'm on this like little island, you know, standing on rocks. And then the sun comes up from way out in the distance over the mountains in Oregon, and the sun comes up, and I felt this beam of light from the sun penetrate my skull, and I had an activation, right? It was like, oh, congratulations, you have unlocked a Christ conscious activation. And I started I was seeing all the plant matter like shift so fast and turn into geometric shapes and like actual numbers, and I was hearing things. And that was a really fucking intense experience. And I got lost in the woods for hours, and somebody had to come find me and help me get back to the house, because China, the girl I was with, was like way like full on demonically possessed. And that's what everyone there was saying. They're like, that bitch has got a demon in her. Hell no, you know? And so they wanted me to handle her and like get her out. So I had to pack her bags. I had to carry her and throw her into a truck, and we dropped her off at a fucking train station and bought her a fucking ticket out of here. Like, that's how bad the situation was. And what I experienced with that light and that supposed Christ conscious activation, like I got so fucking spiritually high off that I was like on another level. But then I immediately got very sick, like deathly ill. And strangely enough, at the time when I got really sick, everyone was gone. I was in this big house with this huge farm property alone. The investor went back home to Boston. The grower and his girlfriend left to try to sell the pot. All the other trimmers had left, and it was literally just me alone. And suddenly, I'm super fucking sick, where I was pooping bloody black, bowels for days. And I was like, fuck, I'm gonna die here alone, because the house had no internet. I had no outside contact. It was in the middle of fucking nowhere. So like, that whole thing really like trips me out. And what you're saying, um, in a way brings comfort to me, But
Yeah,
I'll stop there. I went on a little rant there. Sorry.
yeah. Well, you were making you were just explaining how something similar happened to you, where they piggybacked an event, correct? With you getting sick
Yeah.
and all, because they stage a lot of things, and
Yes.
sometimes you use something that's already going to happen, like you initially talked about too. So yeah, that's a typical thing, and if you're in your MILAB, because one of the things that I wanted to say before we get back to this clip is that what you're
Yeah.
talking about is that when you're in a cult like that, it kind of sets you in the wrong direction, because then you start to think that everything that happens to you, good and bad, is them, is these entities, or whatever you perceive it to be. And the problem that I had, and why this was so difficult to fight away, or to get my mind together under, was the fact that I had essentially thought that there was nobody out on the outside, in the spiritual or extraterrestrial realm, that was there to help me. I thought it was all them doing everything positive and negative, that they had total control.
Mm.
It was because of the things that had happened to me over the course of my life. I was groomed to think that. And it took a couple of years, thankfully, and outside help from people and non-physical people, you put it that way, that I was able to snap out of it and recognize that there was something good out there, and it did care about me, and it actually did want to help me, and it was actually doing that. It was actually getting me through periods of time where I don't think I would have made it. And I just skirted through, and I looked at, and I thought it was the negative ones, or what I perceived to be these ETs and this trauma-based experience that they were putting me through, because they allowed for me to accept that I was going to be punished, because if they're telling you it's trauma-based therapy, then you're going to expect to get hurt. So they could do that, and I would still, exhibit the Stockholm syndrome and go along with it. But it was a very, very clever ruse, and to get me to give them what I call engineered consent. And I mean, literally from the youngest part of my life, because it starts out with a soul transference. And once I started to figure out that it was ETs or ET related, I was pretty much felt like I was their property. And the only way I could get out of this matrix was to do what they say, that I was here because of them. And ultimately that I had myself to blame, because they took a memory that I have of being in like a big hall, and it's not a celebration. It's a going away party for the people coming here. This was like a type of a military operation where they were sending people to this planet.
Yes.
And I was literally in this elaborate place setting, and they had jeweled metal.
Yes.
Utensils.
We have somebody on the audience who's resonating with this too. I'm what you're saying. Yeah, keep going.
So now this was one of these memories that came. I was asleep, and I suddenly was in this experience, like a lucid dream, but a very intense one. And I came out of it remembering it like a memory instead of a dream, because I'm like, that was not a dream. Later on, it was used against me psychologically and emotionally, because they told me that was the going away party for the people. But what it was, when I was sitting there, it was these long tables that had this really ornate place setting. It was sculpted metal with jewels in it. So white tablecloths. They were long tables, and they were stackable plastic-like chairs, like you'd have at any type of event, like a school cafeteria. So it had a utilitarian feel. The building, I couldn't make out what it was constructed of. It was either stone or metal. It was modern. It was very modern. It wasn't ornate in any way. It was just a type of a modern structure. The only thing that was out of the ordinary was the place setting. But I remember there was a speaker, and they were talking, and they were doing like a presentation, and we were going through the presentations with different speakers before we actually ate dinner. And I just remember staring between my legs at the floor and feeling so depressed. I'm like, it's finally come to this. I've got to go. And all I could think about was coming here before and failing at something. I didn't know what it was because they didn't allow me to remember that context. But what they were trying to do was twist a memory of me coming here to do something in a military operation. And they were trying to frame it as if I was in a mental hospital on some planet, and that this was me coming here in this engineered experience to get better. And and one of the parts that were missed in that first segment is that I talked about this fake spouse. Her name was Deceivy. She looked like Paula Abdul, like an 8-foot tall version of her. And she came through, and the interaction between us was supposed to be therapeutic. And they told me that she had a personality disorder, and that she was abusive because of that, and that I had to work with her, and this was therapy. And so that just set the stage for just me making one excuse after another, and then being pulled deeply into this multiple series of, we can call them contracts. I call them dependent thought patterns and dependent behaviors. Okay, because really they're not actually contracts.
Dependent, or did you say dependent?
Dependent, yes, because you build a dependence and a need to be in touch with them. You know, they became the focal point of my life, and I started to push everybody out and everything out. It just became trying to find the truth, and all of it was based in the fact that I was here to do something, and what they were doing was obfuscating my intuition, hijacking that, and sending me down a dead-end road to where I would pursue this instead of what I was here to do.
Can I ask a quick question?
The universe of positive. Go ahead.
So the memories that you have about kind of a military setting before coming into this life, is that memory of the military setting of like getting ready to come into this life, that military? Because I was really resonating. That's a MILAB memory.
No, that isn't. That is actually a memory that predates my MILAB experiences. You're being
so that memory is a true memory then.
Yeah, as far as I know, because they use
not negative, right?
No, it's a positive memory. I was there, and the context of it later became clear, but it took years. This was 2019. It's taken probably within the last year and a half, maybe, before I really figured that out. And that was me preparing to come here, because once they figured that they saw me, where they lost control, and eventually they started to do threats. And one of the things they repetitively said to me was, stop meddling in our affairs. And they would throw hints that you're here in our face, and that's why you're our property. We took you as prisoner. You belong to us now because you got in our affairs. And that's when the context of that memory shifted, because I had already been suspecting that they had given me a false context with it, because everything started its shape. And the one thing that happens to you as you wake up, it's, you get outside help, but really most of your help comes from inside of you, not just from others, but the unhijacked versions of yourself that are on different timelines, and in the future of this timeline that you bring out of this situation. All of those versions of yourself are connected through life force cords. It's a mass consciousness network of all your versions attempting to work together to get the hijacked portions of you out. So your intuition comes through that.
Can I add to that? Because I've for the longest have had the same kind of memories of like being, and I love the way you said it, because it's like I never use those descriptions, but as you were describing it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it. How it's just, nothing like, it's a room, but it's nothing very like ornate or spectacular, and it's kind of a military setting. And I remember being in this room. It's a big room, but there's nothing like, there's no like art or crazy statues or anything like that. It's very plain. And there's a big table, but the table is, is high tech. You can bring up graphics and holographs and videos and satellite images and stuff like that. And in my memory, what I always remember, like, as myself in this memory, is that I am participating in like high level military orchestration on planning on what we're going to do once we go in. And it's interesting because I see myself as an astrologer, like, because I'm talking astrology in those memories, but I'm talking a far more advanced astrology that I can't remember now, that I was able to understand in that other form, where I'm like, this is, and it's interesting because that memory is not happening within the confines of this time and space, So it's like okay, this is and I'm talking about it in like astrology in a military sense as well. It's like, okay, well, Pluto Scorpio generation is platoon squad, this Pluto Libra generation is platoon squad this, and then we have different factors of that generation and squad that have different badges in what their authority is in, and that is dependent based on their Saturn placement. It was like super high level, and it's like, and if I keep going, I can probably actually channel it and tap into it. And as you were saying about the soul fragments and that stuff, like what I've come to, and there's no knowing, right? I have no empirical evidence, but it's things that I've been finding within myself, right?
Right.
What I've come to understand, like what that space is for me, at least, and what comes through for me is that that's Shambhala, where that space is the kingdom of Shambhala, and that's a place where a lot of us master souls have, through our numerous amounts of different past life experiences, have finally gained an invitation to go through different levels of spiritual initiations to then become a warrior that gets to be at that room, that military style room, to be an active part of the organized operations, then transplanting yourself back into another incarnation into this realm. And it is up to us to innately somehow activate and remember all the work we did through our past lives, and then come back into our embodiment, reconnecting to that space and time. Does that make sense or resonate at all to what you're what
It makes sense. It makes sense because it's what I've been sensing. And what I've been sensing is that over a long period of time, and the souls that do this type of thing, I don't know if they're, I get the intuitive sense that they were created for this intentionally, but I don't know if there's a distinction other than just that was your goal when you came into existence to do this, or unless there's something different about you at a soul level. But I know that that what it took to get to do that was a lot of work and a lot of sacrifice. And the only parallel that I could even point to in fiction would be the Star Wars, and I've used this in other podcasts as an example. It's the only thing. It's like the Jedi Knights work to gain those abilities. So it's something along those lines. And George Lucas was remote viewed, and they found that he was pulling something from his subconscious, from those other parts of his soul, that higher self or higher soul network of other versions of you. And it was bleeding through in his subconscious, and that was giving him the inspiration to write that story. And and this happens a lot. It's why we see works of fiction that depict things that we discover later. Like there was a comic book called The Face of Mars that I'd seen, and it was looked very similar to the actual face. And then it was a civilization with pyramids and things, and then we find it later. That was predating that particular mission. I forget which one it was. I forget. It was one of them. But anyway,
yeah.
So that all makes sense, because we didn't just wake up one day and decide to come here. This isn't something that you just do, because you'd never be able to get back out of this place. You have to have a depth of being, a significant depth of being, and a deep spiritual connection to break this matrix and figure it out and get out of here. So what I knew about myself is that I'd been in and out of here throughout human history over and over again, with a partner most of the time, but others, we'd go in small groups or just a group of two, but it would be part of a bigger operation. So it was like, all these lifetimes in Egypt, which is why I have this iconography behind me of Egyptian stuff, which is, it has a meaning to me. It's where I kind of focused myself in the beginning of waking up to this. It wasn't really by choice. I was pushed into because of the theology of the virtual temple complex as well. Yeah, awesome. So anyway, yeah, so that's interesting, because I'm sure there's probably other people that have had that memory experience of being in a type of setting like that. And for me, it was a going away party, and I was depressed about it, because obviously you're going to come here. So can you imagine? Just imagine anyone out there. Just think about this. You're in a higher realm, and things are better. And the best way I could describe that was a memory I have of being on that planet or place, wherever it was. And it was like, you could close your eyes on a beach someplace, but you can never be at peace, because you got to think about, is my car okay? Is my house okay? Is my job going to be there? Is my dog okay? Is my cat fine? What's going on with this or that person? You've got things to worry about. I had nothing. Everything was at peace in this environment. Everything was happy. God's energy was everywhere. Then suddenly you got to come to a place like this, the meat grinder, literally. And not only that, you have to deal with all of the horrible conditions here and the way people treat one another. But then you have to go and get, you're going to be taken and put into these programs. And then your your soul is going to be spread out across who knows how many different timelines and points in timelines, and put into different bodies and made to do horrific things that are going to damage you for a long time to come. And you have to be extremely resilient of a being to be able to do that and not be completely damaged and have a one and done experience. You have to be kind of different, a cut above the rest, so to speak, to the point where when you come into this system, you're like gold to them. You're the prize, because they want to turn you into their soldier, into their leader, whatever it is. They're going to utilize those talents that you have, and they're a commodity. Just to tell you something that happened recently, I can block the V2K now. So I let them talk on occasion, because I can sense them remote viewing me. So about 3 days ago, I was upstairs, and I felt it down here and I felt it upstairs. So I called them out. They threatened to kill me and so forth, which is a typical thing. They're constantly saying stuff like that. I let it go over my head, one ear and out the other. But what they said to me was interesting, because, what they said is that I stole. Well, what they did is I asked them, I said, how did that directed energy attack turn out? How did the heart entrainment attack actually work out for you? And he said, it didn't work out. We didn't like it. And I said, good. And he said, you have stolen away abilities. I don't remember the exact term he was used, either abilities or a talent or something. Let's just use abilities. You have stolen abilities away from us that belong to us, because we own you. So what they're doing is they're fracturing your being, and they're stripping away these abilities. I used to think they were suppressed by implants, that they would implant you, and now that's for the mind control. No, actually what it is they fracture your being, and they literally take these abilities away from you, leaving you a shell of yourself that's here. And then they can put those things back into you, alter you out by putting you into an altar, and then essentially sending you through a portal to do something. In my case, I don't get used like that, because that experience that I had, where I had the soul transference memory, was a way of them showing me that if I didn't conform to their program and just go along with it and stop fighting them, that they were going to make my life a living hell each and every lifetime that they put me back here in a state of being sick, suppressed, poverty-stricken, handicapped, whatever it is, just tortured. And that the only way out of that was total conformity, and to give up the last bit of my original self, which is what they're not going to get. And so another thing too, been working on this particular riddle. the original self, I used to think that was the version of you that they first took when you got put into these programs and you first came here. What I've realized is that the original self, because the original self is key to getting out of this matrix, because it has more of the original self contained in it. If you remember, I said they strip away aspects of your personality, they break it down, and they take away your abilities that you've worked for, or it's your psychic birthright in general. So they stripped it away. Hold on a sec.
Yep.
Anyway, what I was trying to say is that they strip that away from you, and they feel that they own it. So each and every ability you've got is a commodity to them that they can use at an altar. So for them, this was like theft. This was like, you've stolen this back. And how I got it back is as I started an integration with an altar that's in a position of authority within their ranks that can't be punished for it. And the alternative was for me to die. And because they were going to kill me before 55. So everything that they've done to me, it was just a continuation of that. So I had to be able to defend myself. And I wanted to get back to what I was saying about the original self. It's the original self that can get you out of this. You can break the conditioning. You can break this matrix construct, and you can get out of here by getting rid of the engineered consent, so that then when you die and they hit you with a frequency, it won't affect you. There's a MILAB in this community who's been in the soul traps and came out of it because those frequencies didn't work. The frequencies make you forget the context of the moment, so that you don't remember you were just with your spouse, your kid, or whatever. You just had a car accident. All of a sudden you're in a void. It feels good. You see light. You want to go to it. You hear family and friends. You may see God, you may see Jesus, whatever you believe. You're going to be pulled into it, and you're being pulled into a tractor beam of a spacecraft, and you're going to be taken back to a dumb and recycled back into these programs, or to a human body someplace else. The Farsight Institute just remote viewed this recently.
Yeah, we watched that. That was a pretty wild one.
That absolutely was great, because it validated so many things that I've had to work so hard to find out with working with other people and doing inner work with myself and having experiences. Because when I saw that, it answered a question that the secondary soul traps that they showed in the magnetosphere and their other earlier works was a secondary type of trapping. But the primary trapping is done by spacecraft. And what the worst part of this is that who comes to get us? It isn't just Greys. It's our own alters. They're using human beings, clones, who were trauma fractures, soul fragments, who then animate those clones, and they're the foot soldiers to collect everybody up when they die. It wasn't always like this, but they've got that personnel now due to the contracts that they signed back in the 1940s when all of these programs started. The goal was to essentially use us like they use the Greys to manage us, to herd the herd. So in other words, the sheep manage the sheep.
Yeah. Quick question, or actually, if we can, there's like, before we like end the episode, and we're gonna continue this too for a part. This is part 2, actually, you guys. So we'll continue this for part 3, maybe even a part 4, because there's a lot here to talk about. And I know we want to watch that third video too. So we'll play that video, and I just want to bring back into the space here. Hold on, we got a question. Can I ask? Sorry, I missed. What satanic cult were you in? Mine was Centerpoint, run by Masons in New Zealand and Aussie. Then came the family bloodlines. Okay, Stone Hobbit. So Nathan and I are talking about an online group called the Joy of Satan Ministries, which we both have a history being a part of during different times of our lives. Nathan and I did not know each other until very recently. You can visit the website if you're not afraid and look at it. But that's what we're talking about and exposing. And one of the reasons why we are sharing our experiences together is because a lot of the work that Nathan has done is put together the Anunnaki connection with the CIA, Honeypot connection, and the secret space program connection, and using the Joy of Satan Ministries to to somehow bring in particular individuals that were used in the military secret space programs and keep them under some form of hypnotic conditioning and controlled, so to say. And there's a lot more to it, but yeah, going back to some of the things I just want to put back in there. On a flash of lightning, literally just happened right as I did that. That was cool. Uh, I want to talk about Project Ibis if we can, because that's something that's a word we haven't used yet, and I think we should talk about that a little bit before tonight's end. Is Project Ibis, and bring up Michael Aquino and even Maxine a little bit. So I'll take your lead. Do you want to watch the video first, or can we talk about a little bit about Project Ibis? What do you think?
Well, let's just get into the discussion real quick. We'll get over.
Okay.
I mean, last time I was here.
What is Project Ibis?
Well, Project Ibis to me is what I've experienced. I don't have the memories of other people. I know that Project Ibis involves the manipulation of time and the manipulation of the current timeline. That's about it. I don't talk about anything that I don't remember personally myself. Obviously, I was in it, but I don't have any. Like I said, I don't have any memories. The only thing that I could say is some people in this community look familiar, to me who are in it. The guy looked familiar. Michael Aquino, not as he was as his older self, but his younger self, looked very familiar and disgusting to me. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't seen any of his pictures. It's ironic that I'd been in all this, but I'd never seen any of his younger pictures, especially the one with Anton LaVey. That's the one that really stuck out, where he's standing there next to him in some house or office someplace, and it's clearly he just looks disgusting to me. And there was a music group, I don't remember what it was called, but it was like this goofy music video where they were wearing monkey suits, and the lead guy was doing the vocals looked a lot like Michael Aquino in the face as he was younger, and I was always turned off by his appearance. So it starts to make you think, I know this piece of garbage, there's something there. He was he started it. Well, he was in the military, he was in the Church of Satan. He didn't like the direction of the Church of Satan, which is more of an atheistic type of thing. Satan is kind of like what do they call it? It's like a representation of something. It's like an image, but it's not a real being, is how they see it. So but he saw it as something different. He wanted to get to the roots of the Egyptians. He saw the connections all there. So he wanted to be not just what he called a card-carrying Satanist, which is a term that Maxine used. So it's actually a term that he used, and it's been repeated by people in the community that remember him saying it. He wanted to be.
What does that mean? A card-carrying Satanist? What does that mean?
Basically, Church of Satan. They gave a membership card, so you'd have a membership card. Yeah, you had a lifelong fee you'd pay, or a monthly, whatever it was, and it was run out of an apartment in San Francisco. It was more of a ruse on Christianity, just like kind of like the atheists that just wanted to push the buttons of the religious people. But I think it was deeper than that. But that's how it presented itself. It's like we're just doing these things for fun or whatever. We get off on making a nuisance of ourselves and scaring people. Mm-hmm. Michael Aquino wanted to be the real Satanist. So when it came to the creation of Joy of Satan, which is referred to as spiritual Satanism, because you have LaVeyan atheistic Satanism, and then you have the spiritual Satanism, and then you have theistic Satanism. So theistic Satanism would be what the elites are involved in, or something like that. It would kind of put that in that category. But the spiritual stuff has to do with mixing the Anunnaki, and that's the creation of what was told to me is a creation of Project Ibis. And how this happened was, this is all I have to link the two, but I think it's enough because of all the stuff that's happened to me. The handlers literally told me, yeah, there he is. Now that's one of his older pictures, but if you look like there, now that right there makes me sick to my stomach.
Yep.
The older version, it's just like I wasn't involved with the older version of him, because I had seen those older pictures of him when I was looking into the Joy of Satan. They bring his name up, and I went to the back then, I think the Temple of Set, I don't know if it's still around, but it was around back then. So I'd been to the website. But I don't remember seeing any pictures of him at that point. And at that point, I had virtually no memory recall within the MILABS stuff. It was just that soul transference memory. But so the handlers told me that the Joy of Satan was a social experiment in Project Ibis that I was put into.
Okay.
And that's how I made the connection of the two. But, going beyond that, this was like, I am a MILAB. I realized that, and I realized that I was groomed into this cult. There's like, okay, if this isn't Project Ibis and they lied about it, then it's some other project and it's military. Now, the other thing too is the voice to skull stuff that I was getting. I did a session with Olivia James, who has uncovered a lot of good intel on these handlers and how they operate. And I've gotten a lot of intel in similar ways to her, where she would search them out in a psionic way. I would just connect with them through the interface that they set up to harass me with, play mind games, and then argue with them 16 hours a day for close to a year and attempt to extract information at my own expense. And so what she comes up with and what I've heard from them are very similar stuff. And it's the same rhetoric, the same attitude, the same patterns of behavior and same patterns of speech. But what they've done is they've created a system where they take altars and they use these altars to manage the other us in society and the other altars. Whoever they have as assets in society, there's altars in these programs that are connected with the military industrial complex and big tech. And the company that she found that was working with me, that was doing this to me, was called Soft Cell Holdings. And that's an Indian tech company that's based in, I think, 4 different offices around the world. It's very high tech. You go to their website, there's all of this interactive security that comes up. It's like no other website I've ever been to because of the type of level of security. It literally engages the person as soon as you log in, which is very unusual. And what she found is there's a core, just like you have super soldiers, just like you have what I would call social implants, like a Maxine that goes out in society and creates a cult for Project Ibis. You actually have a core of handlers that work using the tech. And I have 3 of them that are assigned to me, and then there's others that fill in. But it was 3 main ones during that roughly 7 or 8 months that I was having really intense 16-hour-a-day arguments with them and trying to get information. But they're the ones that actually staged the alien stagecraft of the Joy of Satan. It's a tech company. It's a virtual temple complex, and it is part of the military industrial complex. And its sole purpose, there's a couple, I believe. One is a fishing expedition for other victims. And who knows what that could be. It could be a multitude of programs that involve this. There could be the use of parasitic negative spiritual beings, which we know that's one of the programs is Project Traveler, and there's others, and that they could be using those same enslaved, mind-controlled, parasitic beings to be used in the Joy of Satan as well for research and development for possibly spiritual-based weapon systems or demonic-based weapon systems. So, they're using literally every tool in the toolbox in this world because they've literally got a breeding ground or a nesting situation for these entities that feed off of us. And they've created an ideal environment for them so that they can pull from that environment and use them in the programs. So I believe that it's not just IBIS. I believe it's multiple programs. I believe this isn't just a one and done thing.
Yeah.
Because the Joy of Satan fits a pattern that I've seen across the internet of virtual temple complexes. And what I mean by that is they'll take someone who is, has the right qualities, they're influential, and they can speak properly, they can talk and articulate information, and they put them through a conditioning process, and they create a social implant, and they put them out to be a mouthpiece for something, and ultimately it leads people astray. And there's different versions of this. I think there's people that go out to do something positive. They get co-opted. Some are groomed for this, but ultimately they've created a situation where we have a minefield on the internet. When you have these spiritual awakenings and you go out and you try to find information and helping other people like yourself, they have all of these traps set up for you to fall into. You know, the Joy of Satan is just one. There's other Enki cults out there. I think we kind of know of one other that's actually bigger and perhaps even more destructive at this point than the Joy of Satan. But, you know, they target everyone.
Well, which one? Well, what is it?
It has a reputation, and once you bring it up, your channel gets attacked, and you start getting black magic and other stuff, and it has nothing to do with Satanism.
Okay. Well, you can message it to me later then.
I'll leave it like this. I don't want to cause trouble on your channel. I'd more or less prefer to have it against me solely, but the initials are ED, and it's not erectile dysfunction. And it's a lady. And she talks about the return of Enki, not much different from the Joy of Satan. So, you know, this is.
Oh, it's that one person. Yeah, that's crazy.
She speaks from a spacecraft.
She's crazy, man. She's crazy, dude. Okay. All right. So let me just so Project Ibis is social engineering, manipulation, and
manipulation. I know that.
Say again.
It's the manipulation of the timeline, I think, was possibly one of the primary focuses of it. I don't have a lot of information on it because my exposure to it was through this. So this has been the rabbit hole that I've been forced down.
Okay.
For the time being.
Okay. We have a question here. So is Enki actually Satan? So in the Joy of Satan Ministries, the way that they portray it is so the way that they portray Satanism in Joy of Satan Ministry, and this is how they hooked me, right? Because the way they laid it out was like, oh my gosh, yeah. So the way they laid it out is like, okay, Christianity colonized the world and had everybody, you know, fall into this dogmatic religious system. And before there was Christianity, there were a pantheon of different religions and practices around the world that weren't necessarily connected, but had similarities, worshiping the seasons, practicing this, practicing that. And so the way that this ministry portrayed it is that everything that, it sums down to this: everything that's not Christian throughout history eventually became satanic because it was not of the religion. So paganism, Taoism, anything not, you know, of the Bible, praying to Christianity, labeled to Satanism. So that was part of their delivery. Then they go even deeper in saying that before all of this, all the way in ancient Samaria, where we had the Anunnaki coming in here, and they created, you know, hybrid beings with us and the primates on this planet. And so they were, you know, they go as far as to that and talking about how, you know, paganism and different practices around the world were all like originating from our Sumerian origins when the Anunnaki came here. And then we just lost ourselves, and everything that's not of Christianity is now Satanism. So they were like, Satanism is not even bad. That's how they delivered. They're like, Satanism ain't even bad. Right. It's just not Christian, right?
That's a spin-off and a bit of the Gnostic Christians who believe that the God of the Bible was the real devil. Mm-hmm. So it has aspects of Gnostic Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Aleister Crowley stuff, you name it. It's all in there, and it's all based on the Anunnaki story. So it's Sitchianism times 10, essentially. So, yeah. And what it is the old gods, the old pagan gods, were the original creators of humanity that love and care for us. And this world and all of us were stolen away from them. And the Galactic Federation was the bad guys, and they came in and took over the planet and enslaved people. And I was told from not just the handlers, which was the fake ETs, but by people in the group who were getting the same information as me. Now, what I found is that much like the New Age, people get told different things. In the New Age, you're told that the channelers, you're all told different things because it's a intuition test. It's to get you to see through the BS by giving you BS so that you use your intuition and you cherry pick the truth out of it. And then it trains you to a global psychic awakening. I got to put an ad in here again. So, but yeah, it's a spin on everything that you would have thought, especially if you drifted away from the mainstream religion, floated into atheism, and then got into the New Age. And that was the background of literally everybody. Some of them had a Wicca background or a little bit of satanic mess, fooling around with it. But that was the background. And people who have been through and what you said in the beginning, a rough life, God never answered your prayers, but now you've got Enki or Satan. And when it came down to, for me, it was like I perceived this ET threat. So there was one part of the website, and I was like, it really caught me. It said something like, I don't even know if it's still there, but it said something like, we couldn't get any help before, but now the source of our help or the hero all along was Satan. And here he is, and he's going to kick these ETs in the ass and give us back our psychic abilities and our freedom of the soul, and everything's going to be restored. And then when we die, we're going to the Egyptian afterlife, which is in Orion. So that was the whole premise of this thing. And,
and then, which is also very Masonic too. Yeah.
And it goes back to that original memory I was talking about of being in that room with all that huge place setting and all the, the jeweled stuff and everything, because they know that inside you have an extremely strong intuitive drive. Some of us do, to not just wake up, but to do a mission, to do something positive. So they're taking that from you and saying, that intuitive feeling you have, they're capturing that emotion and that energy, and they're funneling it into dead end to just pummel you with either put you through a semi-okay experience or just absolutely systematically destroy you. And some of the people, the love bites were very rampant in that. There were some of the most extreme things. Literally, if you wanted to study the love bite scenario or the situation with that, it would be very difficult to do it, because if you're not initiated in and part of it, and the ETs or the military doesn't want you there, you're not going to be able to interact with these people unless you're a victim yourself. So you don't see everything until you're well out of it. And it was literally every love bite scenario you could possibly come up with was being orchestrated there, including love bites with people that the person hadn't even met, maybe a celebrity or something. There was a woman who was deeply suicidal because she had met a guy in a backstage who was a drummer of a band that had somebody from Soundgarden and a couple other groups. I think it was called Army of One or Army of Anyone or something. It was like a spin-off group that lasted for a little bit and had a top 10 hit. She went to the concert, met the guy, and then the handlers started to tell her that this was her afterlife husband. This was her soulmate from a past existence. That he was Horus, the sun god. She was his bride, or whoever that was, I forget, in the pantheon. And that and that's the other thing too. Most of the people were told they were a pagan god.
Yeah.
It got so bad that there was multiple Liliths and there was never an Enki, but there was everybody else. Lilith, there were so many girls that were told they were Lilith that after a while they would just put their handles like Lilith 205. Or I actually laughed one day. I saw the real Lilith. It said the real Lilith and had a big number behind it, like everybody else had used it too. So there was a lot of, so first the Lilith and everybody's, now we got to have the real Lilith. But yeah, it was just, and that's ego. That's an ego trip to tell you you're just powerful being.
Yeah.
What do I find is that the confusing part is what do I find when I get into the MILAB community is that I meet other people, not a lot, but some who have that same type of memory. And a lot of these people have elaborate memories in regard to being a pagan god. So the question is, what is going on with that? Are they trapping these beings that played these roles, or are they putting these memories into people, or are they running a program where they literally put you into these lifetimes and run kind of a simulation?
Yeah.
It is the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think with things like that are probably situational. Because it could be a little bit of all things, but it depends on the person. And then I think it's a matter of like going through a protocol of like vetting and interviewing an individual to see what what might their experience be. Is it real experience, or is it a product of the programs and conditioning? And going through that, because I mean, being a MILAB and have gone through the MK Ultra programming, like the layers of fuckery that they put into the mind. And then not only that, like MK Ultra programming is constantly being upgraded and enforced via the media content we take in. Our day-to-day mundane life is constructed to enforce and ensure that your original MK Ultra programming and memory wiping is intact. And so, like when we go through the programs and we have been MK Ultra, then what they do is they create movies or cartoons.
Ready to say that, yeah.
They create movies or cartoons, and because they understand the human brain, they understand human nature and our lesser. And this is why I fucking hate Sigmund Freud. I feel like I was around when he was around, and I hated him because I knew he was selling out to the dark side. Because ever since I started getting into psychology and I started learning about Sigmund Freud, I was like, I hate this guy. I know who he is. I know what he's doing. I know what he's done, and I fucking hate everything he's ever spoken and written out of his mouth to the public, because it was all half truths and manipulated, for the psyop. Anyways, so it's like, they understand human psychology, they understand our mind and our brain and the ego, and so they'll make movies of, because everything in life is a fucking love story. Everything in life is a love story. That's nature, to find mate, have a love experience, and that's something that people long, in general. And also everyone has this like unconscious need to feel special in some way. So the thing that people need to understand is, like, when you're watching a movie, when you're watching a show or a story, there are two parts of you watching it. There is your conscious mind that is watching it as it's delivered for you to understand it consciously. And then there is your subconscious mind that is receiving it all as a mirror of itself, unbiased of each and every single character. And then consciously, you might connect yourself to one character. But when you're watching a movie, let's say you're watching a movie and you have, 5 people having a conversation, the subconscious mind is going to interpret the entire conversation and all 5 of those individuals as one individual having a conversation to you into your subconscious mind. And that's how it reinforces the MK Ultra programming. Does that make sense?
Makes absolute sense. And one thing I wanted to add to that is, when I was dealing with the V2K, that they would monitor what you were taking in, whether it be through social media, the television, music, and they would cater the mind control to that. So if you were, like, for example, if you were watching this trans stuff, for example, and they messed with your mind, affected you with an altar, possibly generating gender dysphoria, then if you were to watch something, then they would play on your mind with that. Or they would use another type of example. I could come up with many different examples of things that could be a problem for the person, and that they will utilize. And what I noticed is some of the worst levels of harassment when I was under their jackboot, the hardest, it was that the toxic garbage that I was getting through the television and social media was actually being used against me at a higher level than it would have been if I just was exposed to it like everybody else. So they made you, so whatever was getting into your subconscious, they were getting that and then using it against you and amplifying its effects. So, and they probably do that to people to set them crazy to do mass
Mm-hmm.
shootings and other things. So
Mm-hmm.
not anything. I mean, this could be utilized to cause so many problems in society and keep people under control. The
Yeah.
goal is to essentially stop a revolution before firing a shot, or to stage one.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in another state. We're in another phase of civil unrest right now, and a lot of
Yeah.
people are defending some criminal activity within the government because they've been duped into supporting something else. And if we all could sit down and just block this garbage out and just look at what's going on and come together, they wouldn't have the ability to do what they do.
Mm-hmm. 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 And one of the big programming things that they harp on for people, especially males, and when I say males, I mean the boy child, because there's something very, I mean, and this goes for boys and girls, but there's something within the imagination of a boy child, right? That wants to be a hero, that wants to play in a certain way, right? Because that's where we have like a pure innocence of the divine masculine imagining and playing, right? And one of the ways that they trap that and program that from the child growing up and manipulate them through subconscious is by the one. There are so many movies where it's like, you are the one, you are the chosen, I am the one, I am the chosen, the special. Because there's something in the psychology of being a young boy where you want to be special, you want to be loved by your mom, you want to be loved by your dad. And I know this goes for girls too, but I was a boy, I was a young boy, right? So when I would watch my superhero cartoons and all that stuff in the story, and then going into the movie The Matrix, right? It's like if you're somebody who's been heavily programmed, and when you're watching content like that, it feeds, what's the word? A delusion of grandeur about yourself of like, yeah, I'm the one too. So that they harp on that, on our vulnerabilities and susceptibility to delusions of grandeur that connects to a thread of our childlike nature. And so the whole thing about the one, like in the movie The Matrix, it's like, they made it as that there's only one person that gets to free the matrix and activate, but the truth is that no, we are the one for ourselves to unlock, and free ourselves from the matrix. And there's not just one, individual that gets to do it. Everyone gets to do it, but you have to choose yourself and become that one person for yourself. So they manipulate and invert it and show you that it can only be one. And if you're special, it's you. And if you have some, like, if you've been programmed, you got delusions of grandeur shit, then silently or privately or in some other kind of weird ways, you're going to long for that feeling of being the one, of being special in some type of way. And anyways, I'm going on.
Or finding the one and supporting the one as a
Yeah,
type of cult
yeah,
follower.
yeah.
Either it has to be like this, like a figure, like a Jesus figure or something, a Messiah, Savior figure, or or you get the ego trip yourself, which ties back into possibly some of the people that are remembering being these pagan gods. Now, with the Joy of Satan, what I did realize in there is that I don't think anybody actually had any memories of being those pagan gods. They were just told that, at least the people that I knew. So there was a bit of a difference there. I didn't meet anybody that said, hey, and because I've met people that have mutual memories of being in the Anunnaki. So it's like, oh, that's another twist to it.
Someone commented on Batman. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Hell yeah.
if
We're
this is
all
going
Batman.
on 500 years from now and Batman is a deity, then somebody may be told that they're Batman at that point.
Right.
That's the problem. So, but because these are all, I mean, yeah, and if you look at the structure of all these heroes, it is like that. We're waiting to be saved when the actual salvation is inside us. The whole thing that I get with the whole Christian thing is that the church apparently tries to put Jesus before God, and it doesn't work. And it's, to the point where Jesus is God, and then it just gets twisted. So, I mean, if you were to look at Christianity for some wisdom, it would tell you God is inside you. You don't need a church. You don't need some figurehead. You don't need some preacher. You don't need any of this stuff. But they want you to do that because then they can engineer not the policies, but the population can be engineered from a pulpit, from a position of authority and influence.
Yeah.
They take your strength away from you. And that's one of the things that pushed me into the New Age and the occult, was the part of the Christian religion that takes your power away. It's like you're powerless. It's just Jesus and God. And they don't want to tell you you're one with that, even though there's verses that say that. But it's just, it's another hijacked belief system, like everything else.
Yeah. And speaking of all of that, we are like coming to a significant astrological indication that the Piscean age is really coming to an end. And we're in a transitional phase of the Piscean age into the age of Aquarius. And the Piscean age, like these ages last for like 2,000, 2,500 years, 2,500 years. They last for thousands of years. And the Piscean age was something, it was a process of humanity going through idol worshiping, false idol worshiping, religion, spirituality, and seeking to have a spiritual experience through a connection that is outside of you, which then grew into temples, churches, religion, coming to a place to pray, to practice and connect with something outside of you. Though all of the fundamental messages of all these different religious sects were of, no, it's to go within. It's, you are an individual, you go within, you have the capabilities to, be equal to God, to be equal to Jesus. You are a God in that way. And so it's interesting because we're coming to the shifting of that age. And I wouldn't say we're quite like full throttle into the age of Aquarius yet. We're like in this awkward in between part of us here, and I don't think the true hallmark of the age of Aquarius really starting is going to be until probably after we're dead. It's going to be a couple of generations later, not too far into the future, but just a little bit past our lifespan, I think. We're coming at the 2-hour mark here, so forgive me for kind of jumping all over the place a little bit. But before we come to an end, if you still want to play the video with Elizabeth April and that guy, we can definitely do it. But before we start wrapping it up, I just want to let the audience know that coming back to Michael Aquino, this man, Michael Aquino, and I will show you his face again. This is Michael Aquino, okay? He was a colonel, a military colonel, okay? He was a military colonel that was head of, what was he in charge of again? Intelligence, information and intelligence.
Right, military intelligence.
Military intelligence. So Michael Aquino was head of military intelligence during, I think he was like during the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, or was it the 70s and 80s? A while back. And
the 80s, I remember. Well, actually, I remember reading when I got into the Joy of Satan. I remember reading about him, and it wasn't that long ago that he was in the military. So
when was the Korean War? Because I know he was involved during the Korean War.
I'm not sure. My grandfather was in that. He was born, let me think, 50s, 60s. I'm not sure.
I could be wrong.
They were still taking black and white pictures. I know when my grandfather walked through Hiroshima after they dropped the nuclear bombs, and those were pictures, I believe, were still in black and white. So that was that, and that was Wait a minute, let me think here. He walked through it, but it wasn't right after the bomb was dropped. This was later. He walked through it during the Korean conflict. I'm confused a bit. I'm trying to go back and remember things that I've been shown in pictures, and I think I've lost the context of there. So disregard what I was saying. But yeah,
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine.
the context.
So, this man, Michael Aquino, colonel in the military that was in charge and ran military intelligence and information. Okay. And he had a lifelong career in the military, and he was an open Satanist. Okay. He was an open Satanist. And there's even an episode of Oprah Winfrey where he's on the Oprah show, and Oprah's like, "So you're a Satanist, and you are also a colonel in the military, okay?" And there have been interviews and written texts from him talking about how Satanism is about creating chaos, chaos in the world, and he was head of information and intelligence. And some of the things we're talking about with Project Ibis and stirring the timelines and social engineering and manipulating populations. This man was operating in the backgrounds of all of that. So, if you are very new to all of this kind of information, he is somebody you have to become aware of. He is somebody you have to know who he is in who what he's done in our world, the roles he played in society. It's very important. You can't really be about disclosure or talk about Satanism or even flat Earth for all of that matter, because he's even said that he reintroduced flat Earth theory because it creates chaos and confusion, and he was head of intelligence operations for the military. So there's a lot of things to know about this man. And then with Michael Aquino, and also going back into the 80s, something that we didn't talk about that I wanted to hear your words on too is, during the 80s, America, and I think other countries too, but I know in America we went through something called the Satanic Panic, and
Oh, yeah.
the Satanic Panic was a phenomenon that happened in the country where young people, children, and even adults were believing that they were remembering their parts in satanic rituals that involved their doctors, their teachers, the mayors, judges, police officers, and their fucking parents. And so they were having these memories and sharing these memories and accusing, right? And so these stories were happening in isolated events all over the country, which stirred something called the Satanic Panic, where people were like, is this real? What's really going on? And it went, and there was some investigations that went into it. And so they created a new whole mental health category phenomenon of childhood trauma. And basically they dismissed it. They swept it all under the rug. But there was a period of time in the 80s where a lot of people were remembering their involvements in being in SRAs, which is satanic ritual abuse, that incorporated high level people of power within their society, within their government, in their local city or town that they lived in. And even I, as a hypnotherapist, went through an indoctrination class where they told us to be very careful when we work with people that want to do childhood regression in hypnotherapy, because they think that maybe somebody molested them when they were a kid and they want to see if they can go back and see if they can remember that. And they tried to tell us that we have to be very careful about that, because sometimes the mind can't distinguish things and makes up stuff. And they told us all about the Satanic Panic. And I was like, wait a minute.
They use that excuse for abductions too with ETs.
Exactly. And basically the school was trying to manipulate us. And I was like, this is okay. Or I was like, all right, this, anyways.
Hey, are you familiar with the Finders case? Oh, okay. On Disclosure Now, when I was part of that podcast, we interviewed Pat Jackson, and I've done a podcast with Pat on the Typical Skeptic podcast, and we've talked offline. Pat's a retired she lives in Wisconsin. I don't know what state she was living at the time, but she's a retired police detective. She worked with an FBI agent who was working on the Finders case. Who was eventually he was framed and arrested in order to discredit him, and he spent time in jail, but he was innocent. And so what happened is that they were, and this was going on when I was a kid. When I was a child, I was in elementary school. I would see there would always be these warnings on the local news of a white work van attempting to kidnap children from playgrounds and neighborhoods.
I have that memory. I've had that memory my whole life since I
Right.
was 5 years old.
And I grew up around the Washington, Virginia, Maryland, DC area. So I said Washington, Virginia. Anyway, I didn't say that right, but I lived right in that area near, right near DC and all that, where all that was going on now. So there was always these reports on a regular basis, and they would send home like flyers from the school I remember going home with these, like watch
Yes.
out for this and that, and don't let
Yes.
kids out and keep their eye
Same
on.
fucking thing, dude. Same fucking thing.
Yeah,
But in
well,
Los Angeles.
that turned out to be the Finders, and they were operating, and this is just probably, I'm sure, one of many of these, but the FBI was protecting what was supposed to be or I think what turned out to be a satanic cult of some kind, or some kind of occult, with the occult involvement. And the FBI was facilitating it, probably infiltrating it, monitoring and utilizing it for something. And that that obviously means the intel agencies are involved too. But what happened was, what was unique about Pat's case is that her involvement with this case as an accessory, she wasn't a main investigator. She was an accessory that was kept kind of off to the side to protect her. She still got targeted and became a MILAB. She became a military ET abduction victim and was put through a bunch of crap as punishment or retribution for doing what she did. And that was to try to expose this cult and save these children, because it was really just part of a much, much bigger global network that the intel agencies are running. And it's not just that. You have the DUMBs, the military programs. They're doing human trafficking. They're targeting children. They're abducting people from national forests, national parks. You have the missing 411, all those cases that are very anomalous, where there's apparent people are being abducted through portals. They're walking down a trail. Everybody's laughing and having a good time, talking a little bit. And they're like, "Where's Sally? She hadn't said anything." Everybody turns around. She's gone. She was just there a moment ago, and there's no possible way she could have wandered off. And she wouldn't have. So, and they find footprints in the snow in like a frozen lake or just going up a trail, and then there's no footprints. They disappear. It's just powdered snow, and there's nothing. And, so they're doing this on a global scale, and they're harvesting people. We know they're fracturing people. They're cloning. They're taking people off planet. They're doing literally just the most horrific form of exploitation of the human race that you can possibly imagine. And they're getting consent to do it by the very victims.
So I have to respond to the flyers, because I remember that. I was in kindergarten, 5 years old, and I remember, this was Van Nuys, North Hollywood, California, and I remember, man, that the school sent us home with flyers, and on the flyers were saying that there have been some abductions, and in the flyers was saying, be careful, because what these people are doing is they're covering their license plates, and I have this like vague, cloudy memory too of when I was, because at my kindergarten there was like a part midday where like a certain part of the school went home at a different time than I went home. And I remember I'm like in the play area and something crazy dramatic happened. And what I remember is that somebody right then and there got abducted and picked up like outside the school, and it was a car, and the license plates were covered, but that's like nothing happened past that. And I was so young, dude. I was really fucking young, and I had a lot of shit going on in my life, in my home, even at that young age. And then I remember that. I know that I was sent home with those fucking flyers, dude. And then my whole life, dude, my entire life, I've had the memory of being followed by a white van one day, because during that time my mom used to walk me to kindergarten and pick me up, and we walked back home. It was maybe a 2-3 mile walk from our apartment to my kindergarten. Well, there was a period of time where my father got locked up in prison, okay? And my mom, my mom was a drug addict, and so she was always in and out of psychosis. And one day she couldn't walk me, like she was having a mental breakdown. And I'm a fucking 5-year-old child, man, and I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, mom. I know how to get to school. I'll walk to school myself." Well, I walked to school, but after school, walking home, I there was a time where I was walking home, dude, and this van was fucking following me, and I kept it. I had this memory my whole life, and it would surface every now and then through different points of my life, but I always just kind of just shrugged it off, because that I was like, well, obviously nothing happened, right? And it wasn't until I started being exposed to the MILABS secret space program, deep underground military bases, and implanted memories, all this technology, where I started to go back to a lot of these different memories that I have, but I can't remember them past a certain point. And and knowing everything that I know now, and where I lived in North Hollywood, Los Angeles, on Sepulveda Boulevard, which Sepulveda Boulevard has a huge underground traveling point directly to the LAX airport, which is also where that is it the Hilton Hotel that has the Stargate in the basement. I forgot which hotel it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I know there's tunnels in California. We're hearing about that pretty frequently now. Underneath these homes, like the Playboy Mansion has underground tunnels, and there's other places too. I've heard Laurel Canyon is one of those hot spots for this type of thing.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And it was after that experience. It was after that memory that I can't remember past a certain point, when my real training and testing began for the secret space program. That's when they started. Oh wow! Oh my gosh! When I said that, dude, there's this huge flash of lightning out my window. That was cool. I always get excited when I see lightning. My wife, she's from the Midwest, and she's like, I've seen like lifetimes of lightning. Like it's not that exciting. Anyways.
Yeah, lightning can be cool if you get caught in like a lightning-based thunderstorm happening one time on the Eastern Shore.
Now there's the thunder.
It was so bad at the end. There was like colored flashes in the sky, like it was like the aftermath of the electric discharges were so intense. It was like the sky was still kind of flashing colors as the rain stopped.
That's cool. I like that. Okay. Well, I can probably keep going on and on and on. We're at a quarter after the second hour. I don't mean to end it abruptly, but any final words we should use to close this? Guests, do you have any questions or final last comments here?
Yeah, if anybody's got something they'd like to ask real quick. Do you want to save that video for next time, or just
yeah, we'll save the video for next time.
Overboard at this point.
Yeah, definitely. We'll definitely play it first thing next time we get into this. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Okay.
We've already went over our. We figured 90 minutes, and I figured we'd go a little longer at some point.
Yeah.
But because it is a lot to talk about, and once you get into it, there's always something else, and then something else, and then it just keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
But if anybody's got any questions, man, like this is the time. If you got anything you wanted to ask,
no questions. We're getting some thank yous, and I want to say some thank yous too. And the topic that we talked about today, it is intense, and it can be scary if you're afraid of the dark, if you haven't gone into that place yet. And I've been in it. I've come from that place. I grew out of that place, and so I just want to end it on a positive note. Because this was a part of my history. I was very young and in a dark place, and the Joy of Satan ministry was a honeypot. Okay, and I went into it. I got deep into that. But what I've learned on my journey, thus from that point, is there's nothing to be afraid of. Yeah, okay, there's this dark, there are these entities, there's all this stuff, but it's only scary and powerful if we're not in our own power. And they've created this whole fucking machine to target you. Why you? Because you are special. You are that powerful that they need to spend billions of fucking dollars into understanding how they can capture and manipulate you if they can. So, be in your power. There's nothing to be afraid. Satan, the devil, Lucifer, all that sort of stuff. I've worked with shamans recently where they shared with me their experiences in some form of Satan or the devil coming up to them in ceremony while they're holding space, and they've come to the same conclusion to me, is that it's not, the energy transforms. Okay, Satan or this darker energy can appear to you in a not scary way or a spooky way with horns, but it's all going to be a test. This energy, this darker energy, is all a test of your own integrity in the faith and belief that you stand in. Okay, so you stand in strength and integrity in what you believe in. I believe that I am a divine creator being. My essence is that of a Blu-ray starseed child, and there's nothing that can ever take that purity away. And as long as I stand in that power and that faith, I can look in the eyes of anything and not be, taken down, abused, or beaten in any way whatsoever. So I want to share that, because I want whoever comes across and viewing this video and hearing this information to not make themselves sick in fear or uncertainty and doubt, because I've seen that in many places. I've been in many spaces where I've shared, like, oh, back in the day when my dark ages, I was involved in this satanic thing for a little bit, and then they can no longer see me, they can no longer hear me, because they're filtering and processing their own judgments and fears and misconceptions of what things are. So I hope that doesn't happen for you. And if you do experience those types of things, I challenge you to go deeper into your strength and your ability to rise above, this realm of polarity. And so anyways, I'm gonna end it at that note. And Nathan, if you have any last words to say, let it rip, brother.
Sure. I want to say that evil is powerful if you empower it.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I was talking about earlier, I don't know if I made a coherent or complete thought or relayed a complete message about the attributes of yourself and how they strip those attributes away, those talents, abilities that you have, including your personality, the positive parts of your personality. They like to leave you as an empty shell that's negative, so that you have no power and you have no way to get back on track and gravitate towards the positive. They want you in a negative state of mind all the time. They want you suicidal. They want you, because if you're suicidal, they can kill you. They can take you out and they can reassign you in these programs. They can do what they want if you're willing to just give your life up to them, because you can't take the punishment that they're dishing out anymore. So, you've got to empower yourself. And when I was talking about the original self, just to nail that down a little bit better, you could be an alter in this life, and your original self could be the version of you they first got. But it doesn't matter, because it's whatever version of you takes that power back, that becomes your original self, because you're pulling all of your attributes back to you. So that's the part of you that you need to be. That's what you need to become to get out of this. Whether you're in the programs or you're not, you can get out of this. And it's stop giving them consent, take your power back. And like you said, you have to assume that power. And I would say you have to go one step further than that to really solidify that. And you have to step into and become it. You have to put yourself in harm's way. So that means doing things that other people won't do because they're afraid to do, speaking publicly if there's something like this that needs to be exposed, speaking up when someone's getting hurt, when someone's being exploited, anything like that. You need to do that, and you need to get to the point where you do it without question and hesitation. Assume that you're that being and become who you used to be, who the person that you were, the being that you were, that they stripped it all away from to make you the shell that you are. You need to take that back. And if you become that original self as close as you can get, that can get you out of this. And it can help change a lot of things, not just in your life, but in helping other people. And if we all do that and get on the same page and work together for that common goal of empowering ourselves and each other to help one another, we can turn this around faster. We can make this world a better place, and we can get rid of this scourge that is essentially enslaved us, because we have to. I mean, we're here to do this. And I firmly believe that as time progresses here, that there's going to be an event that's going to take place. It's going to be an extraterrestrial war. And I think that those of us who are in these programs, who are waking up and actually gaining that strength back and taking that authority back, you're not the only one that's waking up. Your other parts of the other versions of you are going through a similar chain reaction type of experience. And your whole being is waking up and taking its control back from the AI infection that has taken those pieces over, as well as the conditioning and the mind control. You got to peel it back like layers of an onion. And that, you liberate your soul from this trap. And I'm getting swarmed by gnats right now. So they know what this is, because I kill them and they reincarnate and they come back. So that's,
I'm going to respond to Selena real quick, who said something while you were talking. What can we do to stand up to beings such as Satan and proclaim our sovereignty? This is a really good question, and I'm going to share what my protocol has been, what I kind of learned dealing with this, because I'm coming from a direct experience, because when I was 17 years old, I came across this organization and I followed along with the ritual, right? And I became a member of this practice, and for years until I realized, oh my gosh, no, I don't actually align with it, and removed myself. And for a few years after removing myself, I went through a lot of fears and uncertainty and not in my power. Oh my gosh, I went against my devotion. I went against my original alignment. Bad things are going to happen to me. Bad things are happening to me. I went through a lot of different things with that. And some moments I hit really dark places. And in other moments, I just completely forgot all of it until bad stuff started to happen again. And what I've come to learn through all of that is it's all just a reflection of my mind. It's all mind games. It's all mental mind games. Satan, whatever. Maybe it's a real energy that exists, but the only thing in how it can operate and be effective is through my mental health. It's through my own mind. And if I am running through fear because things are happening in my external life, in my external reality, and I'm pondering and wondering, is this Satan? Is this a demonic energy? Then what I've come to understand, what I do in that moment is I create an opening of vulnerability to allow external energies to come in, because now I'm no longer living in a place of certainty. Now I'm questioning, wow, is Satan, is our dark energies now doing this? And so it's a mental game. And so my advice, the best practice to do is to be certain and strong and in doing the work in your mental health, your mental stability, and finding balance in that. And you might find moments where you teeter-totter more than one end, and you experience challenges when you're on the precipice of new stages of growth or whatever. Well, that's just all very healthy reflections in you having to see yourself some more and process some more shadows, and not give your power into some what do we call it, egregor, a egregor type entity. So that's my advice for that. Okay.
Hey, it's always great when you get to the truth and it's validated by other people who were getting there at the same time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It really feels good, because it lets you know that you're validating them and they're validating you, and it means that everybody's growing from the experience and overcoming this stuff. So that's the good part.
Mm-hmm.
We're not out of the woods yet, but we're headed that way.
And the worst is over. That's the from, at least for me, what I've gone from my team, the worst is over.
Yeah, I hope I could say that too. I mean, I hope something is going to be changing soon, but still not quite out of that yet. But that I am headed in that direction. And I hope that everybody else gets there too and follows the same path and gets out of this situation. I mean, you can't. There's no magic way to get out of these programs unless you can exit at death. But you got to strip away all of the control, and you got to do it in your lifetime here. And that goes for anybody. Just being in this this brainwashing system where you have these belief systems that make you dependent on saviors and so forth, and that'll get you going down the tunnel of light and being easily deceived. You have to grow as a person, and you have to become resistant to the layers of deception and learn how you give consent to all of these things and stop it. You got to just peel back those layers, and and a lot of people refer to that as shadow work in regard to what you were talking about, the astral attachments, the parasites, the AI tech that is on the astral that can come and attach to you. We can talk about that next time. But all that is dependent on thought forms. It's like if you have a vulnerable thought form, not a thought form, but a vulnerable thought pattern, and you begin to think of certain things, such as I was doing it before, I was doing an exercise, or I imagined that I was back in a situation that my handlers had put me in, and it literally attracted an astral AI type or parasite with appendages on it that attached to my energy body, and I had to remove it. It's like blood in the water in a piranha infested river. That's what we're living in right now. So, if you're bleeding out, they're going to come for you. They're going to be attracted by your negativity.
Right.
And you look at it like, if you're being negative, you're literally bleeding from the soul, if you want to put it that way. If you want to use that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it puts out a signal that they're attracted to. Which is why they have to keep us in a bad mood and negative all the time, and our lives going down the toilet. So I guess we can wrap this up before the gnats fly up my nose and I start coughing. I just had one go up there, actually. He went back out.
Yeah, cultivating a practice is going to be very important moving forward. Which reminds me, I'm going to be bringing a different guest at some point, who is the prime example of what I'm trying to say in terms of cultivating a practice. He's a Taoist priest. This will be another time, but stay tuned to this channel, because we're going to be coming in with a lot more interviews, groups of us talking and really breaking down a lot of these things that are going on. But with that being said, love and light, death and darkness. We are full spectrum out here. Do not live in fear, live in your power, and stay tuned for this awesome outro.